What is up, friendly friends? How are you doing? Today I have a thing I want to talk to you about, and it is drywall mud. So we've been doing some drywall here, and I'll have some videos talking about drywall, but I had the opportunity now to talk about the mudding. So what we call mud is this joint compound, okay? It's commonly called mud. That's what it looks like. Kind of looks like a big old batch of frosting. Don't eat it, it's not tasty. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that on the seams with some joint tape. This is the paper tape, and it's going to go on the seams. So what we do first, before we put that mud on the wall, is first I like to wet down the mud. So I usually buy the mud in the buckets because I can use the buckets then to mix up the mud. I like the mud I use a little bit more wet. It comes pretty dry. See, it comes pretty dry. It's not falling off of my finger at all. See that? Pretty dry. So I like to have it a little bit more wet so that it flows easier. So the thing I do is I usually take about 1/4 of the bucket I take out and put in a different bucket, and then I add water. So I have a bucket that I had bought previously that I'm going to add the water to. And since I have a whole bunch of water bottles around here that have not been drank fully, I'm just going to add that to the mud. So we got some water. Whoops, don't pour it out. We got some water in here. And I'm going to take this paint mixer, put it in my cordless drill, and I'm going to mix it up. Alright, so we have it all mixed up now. I have this bucket that I've mixed, and see how it drops? That's what I like. I like it when it is more fluid and not so hard, because then it flows really well. What you need to have on hand is a bucket of water too, because if you just leave your mixer like this, that's going to dry, then you're going to have to chip it all off. But if you put it in a bucket of water, pull the trigger a couple times, and it kind of cleans it off real good. So like that sound effect? I knew you would. So now that you have your mud wet more than what it came with, you're going to go ahead and either put it on a flat pad type thing, or what I like is a pan. I like a pan like this, and I like to start with about a 1/6" knife. That allows me to cover the joint better, and it allows me to cover the whole piece of tape in multiple areas. So it's just personal preference. You can start with a bigger knife or a smaller one, doesn't matter, but I like to start with a 6" knife. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of this mud in my pan, and I like it to be able to fall off like that. That's how I like it. If it's too wet and there's too much moisture, too much liquid in it, it doesn't want to stay real well on your wall when you put it on there. But if it's too solid, if there's not enough water in it, it's going to be hard to squish out. Alright, so I have my tape, I have my pan here, and I have my knife. This is the way that I usually roll if I don't have help with a machine, and I'm going to show you what that's like later, but not in this video. So if you just have a little bits of mud, this is what I'd recommend. And your overhead is just a knife, a pan, bucket of mud, and a roll of tape. So if you just have this, here's what you're going to do. You're going to take this, spread the mud just over the seam. You're just spreading it over the seam. So once you get it spread on the seam, I like to come back and kind of hold my knife a little bit flat and kind of spread it out. Then I'm going to come back and roll the tape over this. So the reason I don't have to get that mud very wide, see it's not even as wide as my knife, is because on drywall we have two types of edges. We have what's called a tapered edge, and then we have what's called a butt joint. So a tapered edge, right here and here, is the factory edge where it tapers in a little bit. And on a butt joint, we don't have that. So on a butt joint, you'll have to make it bigger. But on a tapered joint, it can stay pretty small because it's tapered in, and that tape will just sit right in there. So before my mud dries too much, I'm going to put my bucket down. Then I take my roll of tape, I put it right the center of my tape on the center of my joint, and I roll it out a little bit, and I smear it back like that. And then I take all this extra mud, and I put it back on the tape, and then I smear it like that. So back on the tape, and smear it, and then I roll it out more, then I come back, and I smear it, and when I spread that mud, I keep my pan below it, because any extra mud that squirts out the side, I want it to fall back in the pan because I want to reuse it. So now what I have is a tapered joint that it only has enough mud on it to keep the tape on there. That's the first coat. That's your taping coat. So that's all there is to it. It's not that hard, but it's also not simple. Okay, well, actually, let me rephrase that. It's simple. Put the mud on, put the tape on, smooth it out, but it's not easy. It takes a lot of practice to get it nice and smooth. And the smoother you make it when it's wet, the less sanding you have to do. So it's really important to do a good job mudding your first coat so that you have less sanding to do, because sanding is not enjoyable. Work hard, because hard work is its own reward.